omulungi atugakugeti yekyagwanyi amaze kuba ateekebwa munda wali tetumanyi nsonga ki ekwasiza Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu. Abakulu baweereddwa oda okwiyalinga ekifo nekubadde tebanaba kutandikira okukola ne Frank bw'abayingira bagambye clear the press. Era omusajja aze mu buntu naga nti bannange baganda bange ffenna tuli ku mulimu, agambye ffenna tuli ku mulimu, saagala kulaba tiyagaasi wano kuba oda tugirina. Bongera kunyweza wano ebyokwerinda, bongera kunyweza ebyokwerinda. Abasajja balina kisasi kimu, balina majegere. My God, Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu tubaala nnyo mwenna abatuteekamu amaanyi. Embeera bweti gye tukoleramu. Muganda waffe Kasirye Saifura abadde ku kamera 1 yeetaaga saala zammwe. Muganda waffe Kasirye yeetaaga saala zammwe. Bamukubye bubi nnyo ne bamufuulira pepa spray mu maaso ng'ate akiraba nti wa mawulire alina press jacket, alina adiye naye ku biro bya Frank. My God, ku Ghetto TV embeera nzi
network eri mutuzoganyamu ambulance zigenda maaso n'okuyingirawo wano kati tuli ku min price, wano tuli ku min price, wano ku bitanda ku min price gwe batubalaze ku kamera gwe bakikubye min price.
After 30 days, I could not believe my before and after picture. I literally rolled back the hands of time 10 years. When I first saw this product, I thought it looked kind of crazy. Didn't really understand what the benefits would be, but I had seen some before and after pictures on the website and thought to myself, you know what, I'm 48 years old, my face is starting to look a little bit aged, wouldn't hurt to try. So, and the best way I can explain this product is it's like something you've never experienced. You have about 40 pounds of resistance right there. Now I'm pushing that down as hard as I can, but when I put it in my mouth and exercise, my jaw can handle that kind of pressure no problem. So what I discovered is that after using this product, after maybe 100 or 200 reps, all of a sudden I feel all this blood flow coming into my face, into my scalp, and a couple things happened. Number one, I felt a lot more awake and energized. It was a great stress reliever. But if it wasn't for the before and after picture, I probably wouldn't have totally seen the dramatic change that happened in my face. So Brandon was nice enough to take, I live here on Maui with Brandon, he was nice enough to take a before picture, and then about 30 days later, we took an after picture, and the results are absolutely amazing. So what I believe he has stumbled upon here is a massive discovery. If you think about it, there's a piece of fitness equipment for every other part of your body, right? And why isn't there one yet for the face? And now that there is, it totally makes sense. When you work something out, you bring in blood flow, you strengthen things. over time, collagen, reproduction drops, things start to sag. This device, because of the activation, the 40 pounds of resistance, all of a sudden creates
Robert Chagulani, a pop star turned politician who's known by the stage name Bobby Wine, is recognised as the new face of Uganda's opposition. But his rise to prominence has not been without its challenges. Bobby Wine's popularity is considered a threat to President Yoweri Museveni, who's been in office for more than 30 years. His government has arrested and prosecuted Bobby Wine several times, and the opposition figure has accused security forces of torturing him. But the 37-year-old is not holding back his ambition. In fact, he's now directly challenging President Museveni in elections expected to be held in 2021. But will his popularity be enough to get him elected? And what are his plans for the way forward? Uganda's Bobby Wine talks.
Inga motoka kwajire amaso kwajire
kati awuli agala okulwana alwane ekyo kiwe munnammwe afa muli wali mulwana n'abasirikale zokojjawo munnaafa tembagamba bawozaamu abasajja tubabiikirira zokojjawo munnaafa bonna bamulesawo waggulu bali mu kulwana bulwana
Jana! Jana! Kale sabo. Acha pa kwenda sasa. Acha mazwada. Acha por cima de Uganda. É? Obazirimunda. Obazirimunda. Obazirimunda, Simon.
Jengezo moja wa kulunga tajile chingo.
Kwate kundi pamu mkwetu olola mwana nawe. Hey, I will show you the way. Can you hear Dr. Doctor, here. Chichi, what has he done? He's a journalist. He's a journalist. Leave them. He's a journalist. Just leave them. He's a journalist. I find a journalist. He's a journalist. It's not a crime. He's a journalist. You want to sit down?
all over the world. This one never have all the world. What are they doing now? Yeah.
Sazo bali mukwasa emotoka ndabirwa
Emotoka bali mukujasa. We are good. Police ekutera batagense kale musajja mukabanga lyawo police ono bamufuyidde spray omusajja police yino emukulembera simanyi gye yagala kumutwala simanyi kye yagaza Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu naye bamukutte omukulembeze wa People Power bakutte omukulembeze wa NUP omukulembeze bamukutte tumanyi gye bamutwala omukulembeze bamututte tetumanyi gye bamutwala Sikafo ebaddewo nnene nnyo nga bw'okiwulira ng'abaana bagaanye ye poliisi amaze n'esinza amaanyi era nga bulaba eno emmotoka ey'abakuumi be emmotoka ey'abakuumi be nga bwe mukiraba sisimbudde simanyi gye batwala mu kulembeze simanyi batwala mu kulembeze zisimbudde emmotoka zisimbudde bamututte zisimbudde gala oluggi bulungi bana abasajja zisimbudde dduka nga oyo abadde yita wano agenze yita wano bayitemu bayalemeddeyo linda kawo toyitawo gende tukyanoonya we tuyita wayita wano wayise tewali wayise obadde oyita babulokinzeewo mwana wawishi mu maaso naye atukola bubi maaso afuka kifiiriza bagamyayo Wani? Akazigo ne waberera. Kaka.
Akaboy ni nyao.
Oh, ninyo. Ah. Sambo. Kako. Nakasanikira kako. Bamutese munda. Aida jinja na rufenya daka maisha muteke na rufenya za kudaka ne kwa sobola
aizo kutwala kubenyo endala
tebusobola kumutuka bamusabe ujja mukugenda museka bogerere yogereke bigambo gambe byekisimusimu era nenga mani butuza base fala. Yes brother. Wanje se nanga yabakanze mu bakenero bali. Se wose. Nayo mukulembeze bamukora muwambi. Esuba amukute. Tetumanyi. Twende tulikulale. Bajja ne bamukuba. Bajikuba mmotoka ne bamujjamu. Tubadde luuka. Gasiranya makubu kuli. Utadeko patrol ziliyo kompiti utadeko. Taba drone. Drone ya. Yangamula kamuka keba kaje. Yangamula mazena ava.
Kita kuba ugoda jirojera iri drone. Komenti kate pakinze wali.
Patrol yabo esimi. Esimi patrol yabo. Boga una alimye muno. Boga alimu.
Hala. Inakukulira ko limba ku.
Lukmani kwa alimye bulanza. Ejire ya ino soko vaya ate yatadde tasobola.
Noma yakabwe kagenze dda. Sumaya. Wandike namba eno jiwa abali mu studio baida kunku. Je baida kunkufunira.
Tambula.
Aveyo bya deliverance.
Wandika 0752
Wejile chichi. Tugende.
Asa tunamwenda.
Vayo.
Mukaga na mukaga.
Mukade vayo. Koma oli vansi mukama deliverance.
60.
Ina koma no bakuwe.
Kande gwasi
Joba bawe je baba banezo je baba nkubirire ku.
Kande vayo. Afande reka tulinyiraho vayo.
Brother fijja
Bakala tugalira yo.
Alindemu.
Hello? Yes, sir. Ani ono. Sambereza kutambala change chicho chigwira yewansi. Ancho ndiko shakuimira.
Mpola mugambe mpola tuwewo.
Sawa.
Ase.
Era sindike muko.
Tuve tusindike bali. Tuve tusindike. Tusindike. Wala yaja kuita hao. Velu sindika Sheriff. Bino biremeza imodoka byawe.
Walero wafunda. Wafunda. Ndawo.
Kandi bise nako.
Kati wana ngiri ndo. Hello? 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 Ani ono? Ni wani? Kuja.
Bisobola bale tunagenda okubeera
Luka tubayambe. Boss, olinda tubayambe. Geleva.
Basajja bagenda bula tetugenda bafu.
Olinda tubayambe.
Basajja bagenda kubula. Basajja bagenda
kubula. Tusoka tubasindike baveyo.
Ani wine ani ono?
kebyo. Mama ni mukana wano munamu afa mutana mkanyi wano. Katukoli afa. Muri wano munakana munamu.
Bana tujashu afu. Come this way. Munja tujashu afu. Ayashu afu. Munja tujashu afu. Tujashu afu. Alwa. 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 Alwa shafu. Kino kigenda fuka kijukizo kya mawulire. Kino kigenda fuka kijukizo kya mawulire mutuzika wano. Inga motoka. Bwagire. 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 Mumuza mukasuri. Amaso. Bwagire. Fuck you! You are the one killing us and leave us! You are killing us and leave us! Ashraf, don't get him. Why are you killing us? Ashraf, ingira maruko Bajira nanya dwali eliyo kubye.
Simbula. Kati uli agala okulwana ekyo kiwe. Munnamu afa muri wali mulwana n'abasirikale. Soko jjawo munnafa. Tembagamba bawoza abasajja tubabikiriza. Soko jjawo munnafa. Bonna bamulesawo waggulu bali mu kulwana bulwana.
Jana. Kale sabo. Acha kwa kweli sana. Ashima zwa damu.
Guys.
Ashraf isima zwa damu. Oba ziri munda Simon.
Jengezo moja wa kulunga tajile chingo.
Kwate kundi bamu kwetolola mwana nawe ya. Hey, I will show you the way.
Can you hear Dr. Doctor, here. He's a journalist. He's a journalist. Titi, what has he done? He's a journalist. He's a journalist. Leave them. He's a journalist. Just leave them. Just leave them. He's a journalist. I find a journalist. He's a journalist. Journalism is not a crime. He's a journalist. You want to see that? He's a journalist. All over the world. It's your neighbor, all the world. What are they doing now? Yeah.
Sazi bali mukwasa motoka ndabirwa
motoka bali mukujasa
we are good.
I go with you.
Poliisi ekutte Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu omusajja mu kabanga lyawo. Poliisi ono bamufuyidde sipure. Bamufuyidde sipure omusajja. Poliisi yiino emukulembera simanyi gye yagala kumutwala. Simanyi kyeyagaza Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu naye bamukutte. Bakutte omukulembeze wa People Power. Bakutte omukulembeze wa NUP. Omukulembeze bamukutte. Omukulembeze bamukutte tumanyi gye bamutwala. Omukulembeze bamututte tumanyi gye bamutwala. Omukulembeze bamututte tumanyi gye bamutwala. Sikafu ebaddewo nnene nnyo nga bw'okiwulira nga abaana bagaanye. Ye poliisi amaze n'esinza amaanyi. Era nga bulaba eno emmotoka ey'abakuumi be. Emmotoka ey'abakuumi be. Nga bwe mukiraba. Sisimbudde. Simanyi gye batwala mukulembeze wa simanyi gye batwala mukulembeze. Sisimbudde emmotoka. Zisimbudde. Bamututte zisimbudde. Gala olugi bulungi.
Bana abasajja
zisimbudde duka ngato. Oyo abadde ki?
Yita wano.
Agenze.
Yita wano.
bayitemu bayalemeddeyo.
Linda gawo toyitawo.
Tugende.
Tukyanoonya we tuyita.
Wayita.
Yita wano.
Wayise.
Tawali wayise.
Wayise obadde oyita.
Babulokinzeewo. Bwana wawishi mu maaso naye atukola bubi. Masa afuka kifiiriza. Batamyayo. Wano? Akazi gano wabeerera. Kaka.
Akaboyi ni nyao.
Oh, ninyo. Samu. Kako. Nakasandikira kako. Bamutese munda. Aidha jinja na rufenya. Daka. Maisha muteke na rufenya.
Yaza kudaka ne kulidewa. Tebusobola.
Aizo kutwala kubeno endala.
Tebusobola kumukuka bamusabe. Ujja mukugenda museeka bogerere yogereke ebigambo gambe ebyekisibusibu. Era nenga mani butuliza base fala.
Yes, brother. Why you say
Elanga yabakanze
naye omukulembeze bamuwambye Yesu amukutte tetumanyi tubadde tuli kulale bajja ne bamukuba emmotoka ne bamugyamu tubadde luuka
gasiranya amakubu kuli. Utaleko patrol ziliyo kompiti nadeko. Daba drone. Drone yapira. Yangamula kamuka ke bakaje. Yangamula mazena ava.
Kita kuba ogoda jirojera parkinze wali
pato yabo esimye pato yabo bogo una alimye muno boga alimo
Hala. Inakukubirako limba ku.
Lukmani kwa alimye bulanza Ejire ya ino soko vaya ate yataddeyo tasobola
nomanya akabwe kagenze dda. Sumaya wandika enamba eno giwa abali mu studio gye baidde okunkufunirako.
Tambula
aveyo bya deliverance
wandika 0752
wejire kiki tugende
asa tunamwenda
vayo
mukaaga na mukaaga
mukade vayo koma olivansi mukama deliverance
60
ina koma no bakuwe
ande gwasi
jobo bawe gwe baba banezo gye baba nkubirireko.
Pande vayo afande katulinyirawo vayo
Hello? Yes, sir. Ani ono? Samberera kutambala cyane cyo kigwira yawanze. Aricyo ndiko shakwira.
mpola mugambe mpola tuveho
Sa.
ase
era sindike muko tuve sindike muko
tuve tusindike tusindike
wala yajja kuyitawo
tuve tusindike Sheriff.
bino biremeza ebimotoka byabi
Walero wafunda.
kandi biyise nako
Hello? 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 Ani ono? Ni wani?
Kuja.
bisobola baleka
Luka tubayambe. Boss, olinda tubayambe. Geleva.
abasajja bagenda bula tetugenda
Olinda tubayambe.
abasajja bagenda kubula abasajja bagenda
Tusoka tubasindike baveyo.
Ani wani ani ono?
Omunajja kwebyo. Mama ni mukana wano munamu afa mutana mkanyi wano. Koli afa. Muli wano mulekana munamu.
Bana tujashu afu. Tujashu come this way. Munja tujashu afu. Ayashu afu. Munja tujashu afu. Akali afa. Tujashu afu.
Robert Chagrani Center mu bamuwabe ne bamutwala e Narufenya. Bamutute Narufenya. N'emmotoka ya security ya isi bagiganyemu.
Mwagala kumukola ati lati mumuyingiza munda yenu. We want freedom. We want the TV and a peace. And I'm going to talk about the TV now. What do I know? We want him to be free. We want him to be free.
Awambidwa abasajja abakambwe. N'omukuumi w'ekato eyaweebwa okuva mu kakiiko k'ebyokulonda naye tayisidwa bulungi afunikiddwa ekiso ng'alemera ku mukama we. Sekirite gye baamuwa egezezaako naye wano amasasi gatandise kwaka, abantu baadde batandise kujja.
We ready to fight. We are going to die for our nation, but we are tired.
Estambayo ni Rebecca Kadaga. Estambayo Rebecca Kadaga. Estambayo Rebecca Kadaga. Estambayo ni Rebecca Kadaga. Abantu bekamuli Kadaga nagemye Kyagulanyi. Abantu bekamuli Kadaga nagemye Kyagulanyi. Nimbayo bamulolere okutambula okwideeyo. Esther Mbayo ni Rebecca Kadaga.
Yadudde bamugulire ayagala kulaba omusajja gwakutoba wali.
Why living like that? This is our motherland. We are not going anywhere. We fight for our motherland until we die. We are going to die.
Abasajja bakambwe bali mu byambalo bya black.
I'm going to die.
Ekwata Kyagulanyi agimaliriza bulungi. Tumanyi kyeddako. Bulungi ali ku Ghetto TV embeera bamuvuza ekipayipayi obeeruuka. Abasajja abakambwe bonna bali wano. Ghetto TV. Oh my God. Kyagulanyi bamwongeddeyo bamugyeko n'abakuumi be. Kyagulanyi Center mu tetumanyi kituufu kiki ekiddako kati kuba
Bano babana batubonyabonya bayima bokka na Banyarwanda kabisa.
Ku Ghetto TV koli abasajja abakambwe be balina Robert Kyagulanyi Center mu basajja bakambwe nnyo bali mu byambalo bya black. Abasajja abakambwe be balina Robert Kyagulanyi Center mu akamotoka kadde kapakinze awo ne bamukiise munda. Akamotoka bakongeddeyo eri kamera wese. Abamagye abasajja abakambwe basabye abamawulire basabye mu buntu okuvaawo bamaze kwetolera buli oli wano Geto TV kooli order stands okukyuka ebyokwerinda tumanyi kiki kiddako omulungi ariko Geto TV Kyagulanyi bamuyina munda abasajja abakambwe abali mu byambalo bya black ku Geto TV boolaba waliwo order omukulu oyo gwolaba agenda mpola abantu
Please. You're my brothers, we are all brothers. But let this car move away from here.
Which car?
This guy. I don't want to bring the car here.
Guys, we get to be very close.
Is it okay with this? Afande oyogola abantu approaching ze munagamba nti mbadde nsaba musembere sagala kola atiya gas wano oyo ye mukumi wa rank je era sinungi nakumu sajja bamaze okwetoloola wano tumanyi kiki kiddako agenda be tumanyi kiki kiddako abasajja ndaba bagabana nfo ode maze ode ife relax, we are fine, we shall talk later. Tumanyi kiddako Geto TV kooli embeera ya bunkenke nnyo abasajja bongera seke wano tumanyi kiddako omulungi atuga ku Geto TV ye Kyagulanyi amaze kubanga ateekebwa munda wali tetumanyi ensonga ki asiza Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu abakulu baweereddwa order okwiyalinga ekifo nekubadde tebanaba kutandikira okukola ne Frank bw'abayingira bagambye clear the press. Era omusajja aze mu buntu naga nti bannange baganda bange ffenna tuli ku mulimu, agambye ffenna tuli ku mulimu, saagala kulaba tiyagaasi wano kuba order tugiyina. Bongera kunyweza wano ebyokwerinda, bongera kunyweza ebyokwerinda. Abasajja balina kisasi kimu, balina majegere. My God, Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu tubaala nnyo mwenna. Abatuteekamu amaanyi embeera bweti gye tukoleramu. Muganda waffe Kasirye Saifura abadde ku kamera 1 yeetaaga saala zammwe. Muganda waffe Kasirye yeetaaga saala zammwe. Bamukubye bubi nnyo ne bamufuulira pepper spray mu maaso ng'ate akiraba nti wa mawulire alina press jacket, alina adiye naye ku biro bya Frank. My God, ku Ghetto TV embeera nzi
kuna wana power bank. Network eri mutuzoganyaamu. Ambulance zigenda maaso n'okuyingirawo. Wano kati tuli ku min price. Wano tuli ku min price. Wano ku bitaana ku min price tuli gwe batubalaze ku kamera gwe bakikubye. Min price.
Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Killen. I have my own medical practice, and I've been using Doodly now for a few weeks to create these really fun videos to share with patients, prospective patients on social media.
Hi, I'm Brad Callen, and in this video, I'm going to show you how anyone can quickly and easily create doodle videos, just like the one you're watching right now, using Doodly, our drag and drop doodle software that allows anyone, regardless of tech skills, to create highly engaging professional doodle videos in a matter of minutes. Because doodle videos are fun and engaging, they can get you more clicks, likes, shares, and most importantly sales than any other type of video. Which is why Doodly is now the video tool of choice for over 150,000 businesses all over the world, in virtually every industry and profession that you can imagine. Doodle videos are perfect for marketing, teaching, fundraising, personal use, and even inspiring others. After all, one of the keys to a successful video is to capture your audience's attention and keep it for an extended period of time. And since you're still watching this video, you already know how great doodle videos are at doing just that. Not only are doodle videos incredibly captivating, but research shows that they massively boost learning and memory retention. As a result, viewers really absorb your message, making your videos that much more impactful. And even better, doodle videos can make complex or boring subjects fun and easy to understand. So let me quickly show you how simple and easy Doodly makes it to create an interesting professional video. Alright, here I am inside the Doodly software, which is available for Mac and PC. You'll notice that you can choose the style of your video, selecting from whiteboard, blackboard, greenboard, glassboard, and for more advanced users, you can even use a green screen background, giving you lots of control over the video style. In this example, let's create a nice looking whiteboard doodle video. You'll notice that Doodly makes it super easy to create your own doodle videos with done for you scenes, hundreds of characters, a huge selection of props and images, royalty-free music, and even text. And for the ultimate in customization, you can even upload your own images, fonts, props, and music. Now to create a doodle video, it's really simple. First, I'll add a headline to get people's attention, then center it before adding a character. I like this one. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and add a prop too. I'll resize everything and voila, we have Steve reading a book on his chair. For the next slide, I'm going to do something a little different. Instead of adding a character or prop, I'm going to use one of Doodly's super convenient done-for-you scenes. So I'm going to simply drag and drop the scene I want right into my video. As you can see, Doodly is so easy to use that anyone can make doodle videos, even if they have zero tech or design skills. If you can click or drag your mouse, you can create a professional doodle video in a matter of minutes. Not only is creating a doodle video that simple, but we also have a bunch of really cool settings available too. Doodly allows you to customize your video with real hands, cartoons, and our Smart Erase mode to provide the realistic feel that you're looking for. And with just a couple of mouse clicks, you can also easily switch between different doodle video types at any moment. I'll change the doodle video I just created from whiteboard to blackboard in less than 5 seconds. Plus, you can even record a voiceover directly inside Doodly or add background music by simply choosing from our huge royalty-free music library. And of course, you have the option of uploading your own audio and image files as well. You can also select how long it takes the hand to draw something, so scenes, characters, and props are timed perfectly to your voiceover, should you choose to use one. Oh, and one more thing. When you upload your own image, using our enhanced Doodle Draw technology, you can make cool draw paths like this to teach Doodly exactly how you want to draw your imported images. And when you're done, you can preview your video before exporting it to a variety of formats, sizes, and qualities right to your computer, and you're ready to go. As you can see, doodle videos do an incredible job of educating, entertaining, and selling, making them one of the best investments you can make in your business. And that's especially true right now. The going rate for professional doodle video creation is anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 to have someone make a video similar to the one that I just showed you. But with Doodly, anyone can create a doodle video regardless of tech skills and experience, meaning you can make dozens of doodle videos without paying ridiculously high fees to professional design firms. If you were to visit the Doodly.com homepage right now, you'd see the regular price for Doodly is an ongoing monthly payment, which adds up to $468 per year. But since you've landed on this limited time special promotion page, you can get your copy of Doodly right now for a one-time $67 payment. No monthly fees forever. And you'll even have access to all the free feature updates we offer our Doodly users, which is typically once every week. This special promotional price won't last forever, so to lock in this one-time $67 payment with zero monthly fees forever, go ahead and click or tap on the button next to this video to claim your copy of Doodly today. And we look forward to welcoming you to the Doodly family.
It is 6 months to go until Uganda's presidential election, and campaign rallies have been banned because of the coronavirus pandemic. The Electoral Commission has urged candidates to use media instead to get their message to voters. But the opposition says they don't have fair access to the country's broadcasters. In a moment, I'll be talking to the man who's emerged as the strongest presidential aspirant. But first, this report on the country's first virtual campaign.
Betty Nachiaga relies on the radio for information about Uganda's elections due in February next year. She loves political rallies, but she won't attend any this time. Uganda's electoral body has banned them to stop the spread of the coronavirus.
I like it when a candidate talks to me directly, and I can also ask what I want. Entirely depending on the radio is going to be hard.
On top of print, candidates now have to mainly campaign via the radio, television, and the internet.
We are in the third stage of community transmissions. It means that we need to be more alert. and find ways of accepting the new normal and adjusting from the conventional ways of campaigning.
But stopping candidates from physically campaigning for votes has not gone down well with the opposition. They instead accuse President Yoweri Museveni of using...
This is simply outrageous that anybody could consider that an election held in such an environment, limited to media, can be even most remotely considered to be an election that is free or fair. Right from conception to the end, this is about Museveni.
But the government maintains that it is public health first.
We are all aware that COVID-19 is here in Uganda, and we are also mandated to make sure that Ugandans are given information and they are protected in one way or another. So it would be very unfortunate for anyone to believe that government is taking advantage of the situation.
But even media campaigning will be difficult. Demand for airtime could overwhelm local stations and the country's online network. More than 2,000 candidates are vying for elective public offices from village level to the presidency, all at the same time.
Even if you committed all the airtime on the 292 radio stations for a period of 3 months or so, still you would not be able to meet the demand. So where are people going to campaign from? Even if you decided to say, okay, fine, some will use radios, others will use other social media platforms. The internet penetration in Uganda doesn't exceed 50%.
For voters like Nachiaga, that could mean not getting information from some candidates. And for the politicians whose message won't reach her, that could cost them her vote.
And I'm now joined by Robert Kyagulanyi, better known as Bobi Wine. He is a member of the Ugandan Parliament and is running for president in next year's election. Welcome to DW News Africa, sir. Do you think not being able to hold rallies is...
Sure, it's actually not only the inability to hold rallies, but we cannot meet, we cannot go on radio stations. The last time I was supposed to go on a radio station, the military surrounded the radio station, beat up people and started arresting and harassing them. In Uganda, while the regime, while the Minister of Health and other people from the ruling party are going around holding mass rallies and mass processions, the people, the members of the opposition, particularly those from the People Power Movement, which is having the National Unity Platform as a political wing, are completely not allowed to express themselves, to meet people, or to have any kind of political engagement. That is the situation in Uganda, although the people of Uganda are fighting back.
You've had about 2 years to make your case to the people of Uganda. Why would Ugandans suddenly forget you because they've not seen you at a rally?
As a matter of fact, for the last 2 years, we have been completely blocked from reaching the people. I used to communicate to the people of Uganda through my music, but today my music is abolished. My music was abolished 2 years ago, and all my songs are banned from playing on radio stations, and my voice completely banned from radio stations. We had hoped to use the campaign period to communicate to the people of Uganda and reach out to them, because the government in Uganda was always claiming that it was not campaign time. And now that it's campaign time, President Museveni is trying to use or manipulate the COVID-19 situation in Uganda to stop us from reaching the people of Uganda. Of course, it's going to affect us greatly because the people of Uganda need to make an informed decision. Unfortunately, while President Museveni has been moving around the country campaigning, he has blocked us from reaching out to the people of Uganda. And now that it is campaign time, still he does not allow anybody from the opposition to reach out to the people of Uganda. I must say, like I said before, that the Minister of Health, who signed the regulations blocking gatherings is going around holding rallies and holding processions. Recently, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs was also having a big rally and later on a procession. And even the Vice President of Uganda held a rally very recently. So this has been the way the NRM regime, which is in the party in government in Uganda, has been misusing the COVID-19 situation to gag and curtail our freedoms of expression and interaction.
Mr. Kyagulanyi, let's talk about the election itself. Your country, Uganda, has had the same president for nearly 3 decades now. Wouldn't the opposition in the country...
For more than 3 decades.
Fair enough. Wouldn't the opposition stand a better chance if it were united? You've not been able to form alliances with other opposition members. Isn't that self-defeating?
Well, I must say, yes, unity is a solution against any dictatorship. And we have examples in the recent past, and the most recent being the election in Malawi that was massively won by the opposition because they came together. But again, I must be quick to say that the opposition does not only mean the politicians, but it means the people that are opposed to the dictatorship in Uganda. I and my team have spent the last 2 years talking to all the political players, all the political groupings in Uganda, so that we can come together. Unfortunately, there has been a lot of interests that we have not been able to agree. That being said, I know that the people of Uganda are way ahead of us. I am convinced that the people of Uganda are already united. They've been telling us while I lead the People Power Movement, and it's for the sake of the election that I, together with my team, had to create the political wing of the People Power Movement, and that is the National Unity Platform. We did this because we knew that we had to answer the cries of the people to unite. We established the National Unity Platform to unite all forces of change, but it had to come as a political party. And right now, as we speak...
Sorry, I must interrupt you there because I do want to ask you this, right? What do you have to say to Ugandans who think that you've done a great job in using your voice to amplify the voices of others, especially young people in the country? But they argue that that doesn't necessarily make you presidential material.
Well, I'm not here because I'm presidential material. There are so many people who are presidential material. They are in their thousands, but they do not have a voice. I come here, I present myself as a glue. I present myself as a glue to put together all this resource. What we need right now is a leadership that will lead us through this dictatorship. Right now, as we speak, I know that I'm fully qualified to lead Uganda. But again, I know that it's not my qualifications alone. It's the qualifications of all the Ugandans that want change. I'm not doing it as a person, we are doing this as a team. But again, I must also say that I am presidential material, I'm well educated, I'm well researched and well traveled, but most importantly, if we are to compare with the president that has presided over our country for more than 34 years, he is not as educated as I am. He was not as credible as I am. And he was around my age when he came to power, when he took over the country. I want to believe that I am as qualified as him or even more.
Fair enough. And I want to bring this conversation to you, Mr. Kyagulanyi, because what is it that you are offering Ugandans? Talk to us about some of your policy. Let's talk about next year's election. Assuming you get the job and you are president of Uganda, what is the first thing, for example, that you'll do as the president?
I, together with my team, want to put an end to a lawless leadership. We have 5 core principles that we are targeting. One is the rule of law and respect for human rights, which you don't have in Uganda. The laws exist. We have the most beautiful constitution, and we have amazing laws which we do not respect, which the government in Uganda does not respect. So we want to return the rule of law and the respect for human rights. As a common person, one of our biggest cries has been the health sector, because we lose so many people that we shouldn't be losing. More than 300 children a day day, and more than 19 women giving birth die in Uganda on a daily basis. We want to improve the health sector. We want to improve education. We want to improve agriculture because that is the bedrock of our economy. We want to bring back the ownership of the natural resources and land of our country to the hands of the people. And most importantly, finally, we want to unite our deeply divided country, divided along ethnic, class, and religious and political lines. We want to unite our country and then project a better image of our country, because we as Ugandans, we are better than the way we are being represented, or rather misrepresented.
All right, that is Robert Kyagulanyi, better known as Bobby Wine, talking to us from Kampala, Uganda. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Malika Bilal, and you're in the stream. Today, from poverty to parliament, we'll speak to Ugandan Afro-pop star and newly elected MP, Bobby Wine. Uganda's Robert Kyagulanyi, better known by his stage name Bobby Wine, grew up in one of Kampala's poorest neighborhoods. To his East African fans, he's known as the ghetto president. And over the past decade, he's made a name for himself as a musician and social activist, speaking out against what he sees as injustices in his country.
I would like to communicate, but the thing that we have to eliminate. Ignorance and poverty be eradicate. And the whole I get to use them to educate. Yo, don't you try to politicize. Don't think me I try to criticize. No, sensitize me I sensitize. And me know say my people must realize the most important things. To liberty begins in your mindset. To free ghetto people, they must educate. But education expensive to get. It's like you say we carry water in a basket. I don't know why the corruption is too much. Yaka, yaka, yaka. Why the price of electricity too high. Yaka, yaka, yaka. Why the price of education is too high.
Now, Bobby Wine has started a new chapter in his career, from ghetto president to real-life politics. Winning his district in a landslide election, the newly sworn-in member of parliament says he wants to inspire more young people to get involved in politics. In Uganda, about 80% of the population is under the age of 35. So today, Bobby Wine is taking your questions via social media. You can take part in today's interview by tweeting your comments, as always, with hashtag AJStream. And now, Bobby joins us from Kampala. Welcome to the stream, Bobby Wine. I want to take us back through the musical archives to start this conversation. You are a member of parliament now, but as we mentioned, you weren't always. So let's give our audience a little taste of where you started out.
Exactly what's on a poor man's mind. Man called Bobby Wine, a man called Nubi, and listen, we come fit up. Remember where I got to you. Watch this.
So this is your song, Ghetto. The lyrics are in Luganda, but clearly there are scenes of police brutality, there are images from the neighborhood. Can you describe to us what life was like for you then that made you want to put these scenes to music?
Well, you might know, I grew up from the ghetto, and me and many other Ugandans are on the marginalized side, but I decided not just to cry about it, to talk about it. That's one of the reasons why I went into music, and that's how it has been for us. But I mean, I spent my whole youthful life trying to, create awareness about our plight and trying to show my fellow ghetto youth that there's a solution, and the solution is within us. So basically, that's how I've lived my musical life.
You mentioned your youthful life, but I think a lot of people would argue that you're still in that youthful life at 35. But I want to play a video comment from one of our community members who is very congratulatory and excited. This is Anthony, and this is what he had to say.
I want to first congratulate Bobby Wine for the landslide victory He and his wife, Babi, ran a fantastic campaign and spoke the hearts of many. Now, in Uganda, we have a problem of police brutality, long pre-trial detention, a spineless Human Rights Committee of Parliament, a number of laws such as POMA that restrict freedoms. As a legislator, I would like to know what your plans are to tackle the 4 issues raised, to promote democratic freedoms and advance human rights for all. Thank you.
So he pretty much laid out all the problems as he sees it in Uganda right now. You've only been a parliamentarian for less than a month. Which of those do you think that you'll be able to tackle?
Yeah. Well, I went to Parliament to be the voice to talk about these things. I'm well aware that not all the solutions lie in Parliament. The solution lie in the masses. But I went to be the voice to try and influence other legislators, because I know we have some very clear-headed legislators there. But at the same time, to inspire other people, especially the young people, to take on the mantle, to stand up and be counted. And that way we can, create the real change that we want.
I think that's represented here in this tweet from Kanjumba, who says, the world is changed by examples, not by opinion. So how does he intend to use his life experience to improve the well-being of the masses? But before you answer that, what does it mean to you, explain for us who are outside of Uganda, what it was like to be named the president of the ghetto? Clearly you were a well-known person in your neighborhood. What was life actually like? What did that look like for you?
Well, it started like a ghetto title, like an unserious title. I'm one of the few ghetto youth that stood up and spoke reality to the powers that be. My peers, especially around the Kamocha ghetto where I grew up from, started looking at me as a leader and naming me as a ghetto president. And that actually gave me confidence to keep speaking for them. So it was more like an artistic title that was later on taken serious by people even older than us, and that's how it has been building. And later on it became a responsibility. It became a title that I could not run away from, but a title that I had to work hard to fit in, and here I am.
So that trajectory, I know it was a lot harder than you're making it sound, but I appreciate you kind of summing that up for us. I want to share with our audience a clip of part of your song, Dembe. Now this is, the official video was released in 2016, and this was ahead of the general elections. Now the stream did a show on the general elections and the election of, re-election really, of President Museveni. Here's just a little taste of what you said in your song. So those elections saw claims of vote rigging, arrests of politicians, there were delays, there were social media shutdowns. There was a lot going on ahead of the general election. Was this your call to people to say, I'm about to run. This is my political ambition. What did you mean with this song?
Actually, I did that song towards the 2016 election. I wanted to call for peaceful elections, for calm, and I wanted to call upon the leaders to be realistic. There's a verse where I say, when a leader overstays in power, then a country is going to go to the dogs. I wanted to call upon the leaders to realize that there was need for change, peaceful change. As you know, we have never had a peaceful transfer of power in Uganda. And through that song, I still believe I played my part.
So a call for change. Our community is not certain that it will happen. Some of them, I want to read to you this tweet we got from Ambrose, who says, you will not have an impact because over 80% of parliament belongs to President Museveni. Another person sent us a video comment and they said something similar. This is Jackie. Here's what she thinks.
NRM having the majority in parliament, that is over 300 members of parliament, how do you plan to influence anything in terms of policy?
And then NRM is the National Resistance Movement, and that is the ruling party. So you hear their concerns. How are you going to tackle that?
Yeah, actually, one of the reasons why I managed to get where I am today is because I am optimistic. I don't look at the problems, I look at the solutions. I am well aware that the parliament, the majority of the members of parliament belong to the ruling party, but I believe they also want a better Uganda. I believe that they want a peaceful transition. I believe that they have children and will have grandchildren in Uganda. What I present to them is not division but unity. What I present to them is not negative but positive. What I present them is an idea that is going to bind us together, an idea that is going to be the healing of our nation. So yes, there are many in parliament, but their opinions were not cast in stone. I believe that we can also influence them to think positively. But still, I also want to make it clear that I am not putting all my hope only in the parliament. My rise is to inspire as many people as possible to stand up, and especially the young people, and get involved in the politics of our country. That way, even the voting mass will be increased. I mean, many of our young men and women are discouraged from the politics of our country. If we get maybe another 500 Bobby Wines, then that fear will be crushed.
Another 500 Bobby Wines. I like that. I'm smiling at that just because I think at least the musical world would be at a better place, and we will see about the political world. But here's a view from Twitter. This is Tabu, who says, after your successful entry to Parliament, what is your strategy to implement to empower the youth who are unemployed and need jobs? So before you answer that, though, we got a video comment from someone who also is talking about the youth, because you mentioned that this is about empowering them. This is from a prominent journalist in Uganda, Mujuni Raymond. This is what he told the stream.
My question to Bobby Wine is that all across the world, we've seen young people reject establishments. We've seen young people say no to establishment politics, that is, political parties that are established and those that have been towing the partisan lines. My question really is now, as a new breed of leader that is an independent, but also that has a lot of galvanizing support from young people, what is your leadership going to do for the young people of Uganda? First of all, to get out of the apathy, but also, two, to get their interest catered for by the establishments for which lead the political discourse in Uganda.
So what do you make of that? And one, do you agree that the youth are apathetic?
First of all, yes, we have a terrible unemployment problem, and that will take more than just me. It will take more than just suggestions. It will take all of us getting together and having a grand plan. But most importantly, it all begins by getting involved. It all begins by building the confidence. When we get involved and when we build the confidence, then we'll be able to influence the policies. The education system, I said it some time before, that our youth mainly, most of them are not only unemployed, but they're unemployable. So if we can devise means of improving skills and giving skills to those who don't have them, and even looking at the times, for example, today we tend to want to tackle a 21st century problem with solutions of the 20th century. But if we have more young people in the leadership, then we are going to have more updated solutions. Secondly, another brother, a journalist from Uganda, asked me how our leadership is going to be. I don't want to call it my leadership because it's not only about me. We have very many smart young men and women out there. The first step is for us to come together and make decisions together, decisions that work for us, and decide what works and what doesn't work. But that begins by, it starts with coming together
of course, your position cannot be without controversy. It's hard to be such a public figure and not have criticisms and people deciding that some of the things you say are of issue with them. And so one of the instances I'm thinking of in particular comes from a 2014 denial of entry into the United Kingdom for alleged homophobic speech. And so in 2016, you changed your tune about that, and this is the article from that time. Singer Bobi Wine apologizes to Ugandan LGBTI over previous backlash, and a tweet here from someone who says, you recently met with the USA ambassador. Have you renounced violence towards the LGBT community in Uganda? This is from 2016. So now you are an MP. And you say you represent the voice of the voiceless. Does that include the voices of LGBTQ community members?
Well, as a young man, there's a certain communication that I used to communicate in. Yeah, but as a leader, you get to know that among the people you lead, there are different people. Some you agree with and some you might not agree with, but even those that you don't necessarily share the same mindset, you're not going to be violent to them. So yes, you see me dealing with leaders and people, even those who I defy in ideology with, but as a leader, I'm trying to be as respectful and maintain my values and my opinions.
So we apologize for the line to you, Bobi Wine, and of course to our audience, because the connection to Uganda is not the sharpest, but we wanted to have this interview with you because our community is really excited about getting to hear you. But that's why there's a slight delay, about 5 seconds, and it's also why it's a little bit of a choppy video connection, but we apologize and we thank you for holding on. I want to bring up this tweet here because you talked about this not just being about you, this being about a movement and people behind you. This is a tweet that you sent not too long ago. Today we celebrate people power. Please join me for my swearing in at the Parliament of the Republic of Uganda at 2 p.m. Wear your Uganda flag. So I want to show a little bit of video from this day, the swearing in. And you see the faces of people and how excited they are. Take a look. So this is the swearing in ceremony. There you are, taking the oath. This is on the 11th of July. And the camera will move around and you just see people really excited. People are cheering for you inside Parliament. They're shaking your hands. They're clapping. So Bobi Wine, I can see you smiling as you're watching this and kind of reliving this moment. What was that like for you? Because you don't see that every day in anyone's parliament. You don't see it in Congress here in the United States. What was that like, and why do you think there was such excitement?
Well, I was humbled. It started like a small idea. Then it became big. Then I told it about my friends. Some got excited and some got nervous. And of course, some got real scared. But this is something that has been growing in us. I want to make it clear that this is not about me at all. This is about us. I only talked about something that has been in people's hearts and people's minds for a long time. As you can see, I'm only a rallying point of so much that has to be solved. So that should show us that our people are so ripe for change. They just want to find a rallying point, a reason to get together. And now we have reason to get together. We see the opportunities around us. We see like it's a birth of a new generation. It is a beginning of a long journey, but we know it's going to be a journey to success. That's why we were excited.
So I want to bring this up here. This is Valentino. And I think our online community feels the excitement, but some of them are cynical. Valentino says, don't talk of change. Talk of transformation within the system, because you are in the system now. Another person writes in, this is Sean, who says, Parliament has its own way of swallowing the good from their constituents. And then there's the issue of balancing legislation and national politics. So this idea, Bobi, of now you're part of the system, now you are a politician, even if you don't necessarily like that word. What are you going to do to ensure that you do not become like those who you've criticized?
Well, I'm not going to become like one of them because I know what I am. I know who sent me. I know that I'm not in parliament on my own. I'm in parliament because people sent me there to represent them. For as long as the people who sent me there are still there, I am going to be serving them.
So there is a concern, though, Bobby, and it's represented here with this headline that we saw just today. This is August 2nd. Police recruits have scores to settle. That's your quote there. But the article talks about how you very recently were detained on the eve of your own election, and some of your supporters were also detained. Of course, in the past, the stream has covered pre- and post-election violence, really. The opposition, of course, does not always enjoy the safety of having that position in Ugandan politics and society. Do you ever fear that you're going to run into more trouble?
Well, fear is not part of my program. When I got into this, I had seen what was happening to all other opposition leaders and to all other activists. However, I wanted to be different. I wanted to approach this in a different way. Like Bob Marley said, we run things in a rubber-dub style. So as a leader and as a person who wants to do things differently, I wanted to stay out of trouble, but at the same time to be assertive. If you realize our campaign was a very peaceful campaign. We never crossed ways with the police until that day when the president wanted to use the same venue that we were going to use. And even when we were continuously provoked, most of our supporters are young people and they were charged. They could do anything, but we did everything within our power to keep them calm because we believe in peace. We believe in peaceful elections, and we've been preaching peace all along. Yes, we were detained shortly and released, and I cannot rule out any possibility of being detained in the future. But, I mean, Martin Luther King said it before, that freedom is not something that is going to be voluntarily given to the oppressed by the oppressor. It must be demanded. And yes, we know that it's not going to be a walkover, but if we stand on our feet and assert our demands, they are going to be reached, especially if we are using the constitutional means of seeking for that change.
So I want to share just a couple more comments here. This is Kakonge on Facebook, who says, the road to a successful music career is brutal in Uganda, and the one into politics is even worse, since political decisions in Uganda are made by one man. And he's referencing, of course, the president. So he says, how are you going to prepare the young generation to take over their country like you did in your hometown? But before you answer that, there's someone else who has a video comment who speaks to that same issue on you finding success in music. Will that be able to translate? This is Marie, and this is what she told us.
How do you see yourself navigating the next 5 years of your term and successfully completing your projects despite the opposition that you're bound to face as, first of all, a youthful candidate and a former musician who may not be taken seriously, and as an independent candidate on all those three fronts, the opposition you will face by the incumbent political party, which is NRM. I'd like to know how you hope to navigate all those issues. Thank you.
Bobby Wine.
Yes, first of all, Kakonge said that the road to music stardom is rough and to politics is even rougher. I want him to know that the hardest nut is a nut that has been burnt by the sun. I've been burnt by the sun, and you can't be sure we'll go through there, especially if we know that the fire that burns inside us burns hotter than the fire that we are going through. We'll definitely get there. My sister was asking how I plan to go about it and where I see us in the next 5 years. I believe that if we keep coming together as a people, as Ugandans, if we keep dropping the interest in what separates us and picking interest in what binds us together.
So with that, I'm going to end with 2 tweets here. Thank you so much for your time. But the first one shows really the humor of Ugandan citizens. This is that guy. He says, who is the internet service provider for Bobi Wine's interview with AJ Stream? Because your connection is breaking up. But even with all that said, our audience members are still holding on to your every word. This is a tweet from Omwoju, who says, Bobi Wine has given hope to many struggling youth in Uganda. The future is bright. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us, Bobi Wine. And thank you, of course, to our community for weighing in with your tweets, your Facebook comments, and your video comments. This conversation can continue online with #AJStream because Bobi Wine is on Twitter. We'll see you there.
Bavubuka nze nsaba tukole wetuti abokulonda kubeere kwa ddembe ano buyinza butuuke mu ddembe ana Uganda mulonde mu ddembe awo obulamu butunyumire sabye okulonda kubeere kwa ddembe.
Madam President and your cabinet, members of the union, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here with you this evening. I was invited by the union to share my experiences about what they called perennial opposition to the government in Uganda. And that's what I'm here to do. It is true that I have been in the opposition of the powers that be in Uganda for quite a long time. Certainly in the last 20 years, during the tenure of the current president, Mr. Museveni, who has been in power now for more than 33 years. And for that 20 years of opposition, I have obviously attracted quite a lot of hostility to myself and to those in a similar situation like I am. I am right now out on bail on very many of charges in various courts in Uganda, including treason. I have previously been charged with treason again. This is the second time I'm being charged with treason. I've been charged with terrorism, been charged with illegal possession of guns, with rape, and all kinds of manner of offenses. I've been shot and injured. I've been forced out of the country and lived in exile. And my brother has died in this process. We were together in prison at some stage. And so, yes, being in perennial opposition of a regime like I have been has a huge cost. But I have not been just in opposition to the Museveni regime. I actually did not take off to be a political actor. I studied medicine and I wanted to be a medical doctor. But during the study, during my course in the university, it was a very difficult time of Idi Amin, where there was gross abuses of human rights and impunity. And I was a victim of that during
those days. So post Idi Amin, we were quite euphoric that things were going to turn around. And indeed, having gained some conscientization politically during the Amin period, I was a keen follower of the politics post Idi Amin, and I quickly associated with one of the new formations that emerged at that period, a political party that was started in my presence and led by the current leader, President Museveni. But the contestation for office in that election of 1980 was extremely rough, being moderated largely by the force of arms. And indeed, it was during the campaigns of that election that Mr. Museveni indicated that if the ruling junta then, it was a military commission which was governing, that if it went ahead and rigged elections, he would go to war. And he lived up to his promise and went to war in 1981. Those of us who had supported him were in trouble. I was arrested in 1981 and nearly died in prison. And indeed, many of the people I was with in prison have never been seen again. I was lucky to escape. I went into exile in Kenya, but an annoyed person, determined that I will not die needlessly like I was about to, that I should fight to change that, to end that kind of impunity and abuse of rights. And so I practiced a bit of medicine in Kenya as an exilee before joining the Bush War in 1982. And the Bush War is another story I can't go into now. Happily, it ended in 1986 successfully, leaving more than 500,000 people dead. And we came into government. That's when Mr. Museveni became president. And he made a famous speech at the doors of Parliament when he was being sworn in, saying that what was happening then was a fundamental change and not a mere change of guards. Now, I'll come back to that statement. I was then appointed into government in 1980 as a minister, and I worked as a government minister until 1990. We were supposed to organize a transition to a democratic dispensation, having won the war. And the transition period we had declared would be 4 years. We disagreed on how that transition would be managed. And the transition period didn't end until 10 years later and end in courts. So having disagreed, I was dismissed from government in 1990, the end of our original transitional period. And because I had become a soldier, I was conscripted to continue in the forces, and I commanded some units of our military until eventually I fought to be released and was finally released in 1999 when the current phase of my opposition started, now completely outside government. But what I want to focus on is not so much myself in these remarks that I am making. It is on the nature of the state that has created what I'm talking about. Because quite often I think there is some bit of a misunderstanding, and that's why even terms like opposition figure, opposition leader are used, because opposition means that there is government party and there is opposition party. And I would like to suggest that that is misnomerous in our situation. Our situation needs to be viewed with two elements in mind. The first one is that what we are talking about are really artificial nations that were created by coercive power. There were originally different nations within the current nations that were destroyed by force of guns, and new nations artificially created by force. And of course, you are familiar with that creation after the Berlin Conference and whatever. And these new nations destroyed our citizenship. We ceased being citizens. We became subjects of the new force that took over power. The force of guns that took over power was the sovereign. We were subjects. And that means that we lost all power of citizenship. We had no control of our wealth, of our resources. We had no control over decision making. We had no control over execution of whatever decisions or policies are made, and we had no control over adjudication. Those with guns had total control of all that. And of course, at that time, it was the British government. And we were subjects of the Queen. Now, of course, there was an internal struggle all over the territories that were controlled by the British Empire then. I think the misfortune that some of our nations have is that the struggle to regain citizenship did not mature, that we built enough internal capacity to dispose the guns that had taken over our power. I think what happened was that because of the different struggles that the British Empire was facing, it was decided that there should be negotiated independence for some of the territories where our countries fall. There was negotiated independence before our internal dynamics could afford us the ability to assert our will. What happened, therefore, is that we came from the artificial countries led by the sovereign, a real sovereign, to an artificial country led by an artificial sovereign. Because here were now ordinary peasants, some who had qualified to become teachers, to become trade union leaders, being given power and the guns that control it, and having all power unto themselves when they did not have the infrastructure, the experience, whatever goes with having that power. So power did not shift from the colonial administration to the people of Uganda. It shifted from the colonial administration to some new kings, some new sovereigns that were now in control of the forces that were left behind. And this is why, in fact, I think in many of the independent African countries, there has been even times when people reminisce favorably to the colonial era because there was some semblance of more order and development than there has been under the independent states. And so citizenship has not been reclaimed in many of these countries. Power still resides with those with guns that succeeded, the ones that formed the states. That's why in a country like Uganda, no leader has ever handed over power peacefully to another. Every leader has been bombed out of office. And whoever has come into office has bombed his way into office. So citizens, or would-be citizens, are irrelevant in these processes. They do not espouse leadership. They do not determine how the country will be managed, and so on and so forth. It is the gunmen. And of course, in the intervening period, because of the international systems and demands, there has been a tendency to organize elections, not so that citizens may participate and determine what happens in these countries, but to justify themselves. And so we have elections that are totally fraud. You know, it's just a facade. And not surprisingly, even as you may have heard very recently, we had governments that had been overwhelmingly elected only recently. General Bashir had been elected with 94% of the vote. Robert Mugabe was re-elected with 61% of the vote. Bouteflika was re-elected with 81% of the vote. Only for a short while later, the country is to explode, demanding that those systems end. So the elections that we go through, in which I have participated 4 times as a presidential candidate, are elections that I participate in well aware that at the end of the election, I'm not going to be announced as a winner. And should some miracle happen that I am announced, that I will not be expecting General Museveni to come and hand over power to me and retreat to his village. So what then is our engagement? So our engagement is really, in simple terms, a struggle. Having not been in politics previously, I actually did not understand the dynamics of all these processes. I have come to confront them in reality as the situation has been swinging me around. When I went to the war, I thought that there were those who had bad guns that were being used against our people, and that we could get good guns to depose the bad guns and do the needful, hand over power to the people. As it turned out, and I learned the hard way, which is what I was saying, you know, that Mr. Museveni had said there was not a mere change of guards, that there was a fundamental change. The reality is that if you take up guns and fight other guns, there can only be a mere change of the guards. There are no, because in fact the war weakens the society even more and renders the society much less able to demand accountability of the new warlords. It makes their situation even more disastrous than it was before the war that we went through. So what we have been suggesting to our people, and what is ongoing now, is that there must be a struggle, that a vote on its own, organized by the military junta, however clothed, will not lead to citizens regaining their citizenship, or Ugandans or whoever they are regaining their citizenship. That these people who lost their citizenship, who have no control over their wealth, who have no control over decision making, who have no control over education and so on, that they will not regain those until they struggle. And so there are 3 processes that we've been going through. One is the conscientization, the awakening, the reawakening of people to know that this is, first of all, their land. They have right there. They don't live there by permission of anybody, and that they can assert their right to regain confidence, to regain faith in themselves. That is one of the most difficult processes that one can go through when people have been dominated for so long. Fear is one of the biggest problems to deal with, to dispel in these people, because they have been living in fear for over 100 years. In fact, fear has become cultural. It is within our sayings. We glorify cowardice. There are words in our language which say, in the home of the cowards, they are laughing. In the home of the brave, they are crying. So the lesson, it's okay to be a coward. So even if I step on you, just remain calm and hope that one time I will go away. And there are sayings like, it's better to be humiliated than to die. That is those are the sayings that you grow up hearing. It's better to be humiliated than to die. So even if you are humiliated, be happy that you are still alive, and one day the humiliation somehow will go away. We have to change this. And I've quite often been questioned, if you know that, frankly, the election is not going to cause change in itself, why do you go? And the reason, indeed, we go is because it's a unique opportunity to reach the ordinary people. It's not easy on any other day, save for those days that have been set aside for this scene for the international community to realize that there is an election going on and cameras to come and capture scenes of rallies. On any other day, it is extremely difficult. Just before I flew out here, we had a meeting at our party headquarters, and I could not leave because it had been barricaded off by the time the meeting ended. Happily, we have learned survival mechanisms. As the forces were still intensifying outside our gate, I found a way out, and I waved at them as I ran across. But that is, I have been pulled out of radio stations just to talk, give a talk. Because if you cannot reach them physically, at least because they brought harsh rules for organizing a public meeting. We have a law called the Public Order Management Act, which says if you want to organize 3 or more people to talk about politics, you need the authority, the permission of the Inspector General of Police. Not just any other policeman, but the Inspector General of Police. But to ridicule that, even now, talking from the radio station cannot be tolerated, so they can pull you out of the radio station. So elections, when they organize them for that, for their purposes, they offer us a unique opportunity to conscientize our people, to interact with our population and wake them up and strengthen them and give them confidence. And of course, faith is the biggest counter to fear. The more faith you have, the less fear you have. So we build faith in them and they become less fearful. Secondly, is to give them organizational competencies that they can pull and act together and speak together, building leadership networks amongst them. And again, doing this in a manner that will be undetected, because if you have known leaders, they are attacked, they are isolated, they are traumatized. So we create leadership networks that are not known. Now, once people are aware, awake, once they are organized, regaining their power is the easiest thing. And we believe that, as has happened elsewhere, indeed that is the way to go for communities like ours to regain power, by taking actions that will nullify, that will make the force of arms incapable of controlling the power of our people. Because you can imagine, you know, a country like Uganda is a rural country, largely. You know, 80% of the people live in the villages. If they chose, and they organized it, if they chose to say from tomorrow we are not going to send food to the market, in a week the soldiers themselves will run after their leader, because there will be, the prices would have gone up maybe 10, 20-fold. And the, you know, peasants can. And once they realize their power through their networking, and it happens incrementally through struggling in small fights over small things, and they realize they can achieve something. And this is what we've been building, you know. Some roads are very neglected. Peasants wake up and say, nobody will pass through this road unless it is repaired, and they close it. And in 1 week, they are busy trying to repair it, and now they know things can happen by their own effort. And so this is what we think will eventually cause the actual break, the actual fundamental change, that power will shift from those with guns to those without, that guns will be for the first time subordinated to our people. Now, once that happens, there is obviously a very tough job to do to now rebuild the society into a democratic one. The major ingredient would have been achieved, the conscientization, the awakening of the people. But you are talking about a transition where the entire economy is in the hands of a few, and people are totally marginalized. How do they, and part of the anger of causing the change is that marginalization. How do you reorganize so that you can have working public service, you know, that health, education, and so on can once again be available to ordinary people? These are questions that must be grappled with ahead of any such change. The institutions that ought to be built in a new constitutional framework need to be engaged with. The security, how will security be managed, and so on. And eventually also the now conscious building of a nation, because we are different nationalities forced to live together. So we must have a process of deliberately interacting, having a dialogue, and agreeing on mechanisms of how we consciously and willfully live together as a community. So there must be a process, and especially after the trauma that we have gone through, you know, the violence and killings and so on. We must have a truth-telling, justice and reconciliation process that then integrates the country, and then we can have free and fair elections, ending that kind of a transition. So this is how I have been trapped in becoming a perennial opposition person. I joined these processes without much consideration when I was 24 years. I'm now 63. And every day the burden on me to continue increases because of the many sacrifices that I see our colleagues that have made, whom if we didn't continue, those sacrifices would be in vain, including indeed many who have died. Sometimes people sympathize with us who are alive, but there are those who have, you know, paid the ultimate sacrifice. So with these few words, I'm glad to be here once again, and I think I'll sit down and I can hear what your own views and questions on these issues are. Thank you very much.
Dr. Baziglia, thank you very much for being here today, and thank you for the steps that you took to get here. So I wanted to start by talking about the nature of the relationship between you and President Museveni. Some people have made allegations that it's actually a personal feud between the two of you that has manifested in these highly contested elections. What would you say to those people and to those allegations?
Well, first of all, propaganda is one of the constant features that we have to grapple with in this kind of a struggle. Trying to paint those who oppose the regime in the darkest kinds of colors possible and to whitewash the regime. And all regimes of this nature, regimes controlled by a few people, if a few people control the largest majority of people, that's one of the constant approaches. They spend hugely on propaganda. But it's not borne out by any kind of evidence, because part of that propaganda was actually based and even run on some forte kind of history that my wife had with General Museveni, because both of us were in the revolution that went wrong. And there was, speculation that my wife had a relationship with Museveni, and that's what we are feuding over. Quite obviously wrong. And as I've said, not borne out by the facts, because many other people have left Museveni to do what I have been doing. They have not been treated in any different way from the way I have been treated. Very recently, in the last election, his immediate former prime minister, the Honorable Amama Mbabazi, disagreed with him, and became a candidate in that election. And he was treated horribly, just like we have been treated. Before that, his closest childhood friend, a gentleman called Elia Kategaya, had opposed the lifting of term limits, which was done earlier. This time they lifted the age limit, but prior to that, in 2005, they lifted the term limits. We had in our constitution a 2-term limit for presidency, so they lifted it. His childhood friend, who was also deputy prime minister, who had been minister of foreign affairs and so on, opposed that. He was promptly sacked and ostracized, and all kinds of similar things told about him, terrible stories that were told about him. So anybody who challenges the power meets the greatest wrath. Very lately, some young gentleman from the music world called Bobby Wine, who is now a member of parliament, until 2 years ago, he had nothing to do with politics. He only stood in a by-election to go to parliament. But quickly gained a lot of following within the young people. He too is charged, he was charged with illegal possession of guns. He's been tortured beyond belief, and so on and so forth. So it has nothing to do with anything personal. It is definitely vicious protection of the power. And this is why I was saying, that it is better to live under patrimonial regime that has naturally evolved, because it evolves with checks and balances, it evolves with institutions that manage power. The trouble is that, all these people are just peasants who have now become kings. And so they will do anything and everything not to lose this kind of benefit, especially when the competence is within the population to challenge and to limit their power are not there at all. This is the problem that we are facing.
So you touched upon it then, but something you've said is a real problem in Uganda and in East Africa at large is the domination of society by a few small cliques.
Yeah.
How, if you were to be elected and to come into power, would you combat this more structural issue and avoid the same fate as Museveni with getting in and saying that he was going to? And then
yes, so that's why our primary focus is on conscientizing of people, empowering people with knowledge and information, so that and organizational competencies, so that they can demand accountability. The changes within the leadership must be driven by the population, not depend on the the goodwill of the leader to behave well or not to behave well. There must be inherent processes and mechanisms that will, ensure that a leader acts in a particular way, in an accountable way. Of course, it is also important, and that's why indeed there are campaigns, that people's track record is also assessed before they are given an opportunity to exercise power. If somebody has been a bully right from childhood and has never behaved in any accountable way at all, then it would be, and these are all campaign issues, then it would be dangerous to elect such a person. But over and above all that, I think there must be competencies within the governed to control those who are in leadership. And that is the biggest lacking area that we are trying to overcome, to empower citizens. And once it is achieved, once through this struggle, they know that they can subordinate those with guns, nobody will ever become, a dictator again. I sometimes indeed inform our people that it's not our tradition, even when somebody has been exposed as corrupt and all evidence is there, for them to say, I now resign, as opposed to what happens in democratic societies. If you have been exposed, you don't wait to be pushed, because you know that for sure is going to follow. So you do the necessary thing and you resign. In our case, they don't resign because they know that there are no competencies within the communities to actually push them. There is a very recent case. I'm not even aware of any other. There is a Chinese gentleman called Patrick Ho, who has been tried and sentenced in the United States by a federal court for bribing President Museveni. He was tried, all evidence laid out in an open court. He was convicted. He has been sentenced to 3 years in jail for bribing Museveni and his Minister of Foreign Affairs. But in Uganda, it's not even that seriously talked about, in spite of very glaring. Not only was the money given, but they are all, including films and so on, having delivered the bribe, showing him the oil fields that that he could access, and all these things, which is horrific, because it simply means that somebody is in office selling the country. But it's not a big deal. And let me tell you, part of that is what I was talking about, the culture. The culture of exclusion, people being excluded, means they actually treat government as a foreign entity, because it was indeed a British government. Whoever steals from them and brings to them is a hero. Whoever steals from the government is a hero, because the government is not theirs. And so even these ministers and so on, when they steal, they go to the villages and donate to churches, donate to, village charitable causes, and they are praised even when they know that the money that is coming was actually stolen from government. So this is the whole mindset that must change for people to now consider that government is their government. The resources are their resources. Their suffering is because those resources are not relating to their problems. And that's where the biggest work that we have, if we have to create change that lasts, that's where it is.
And you've talked about the disconnect between the politicians and the people, and that can be seen with women in Ugandan parliament, there's a higher percentage of women in Ugandan parliament than in the UK, and yet when women come to vote at the polls, they're intimidated, there's violence used against them. You've talked about why the disparity exists, but what can we do, what can Ugandans do to bridge that gap between politicians and people?
Unfortunately, it's the painstaking effort of transferring information and getting people to be differently aware, conscious. Because even when you talk about women in politics in Uganda, we have affirmative action seats, and which raise the numbers of women in elected positions, because every district of Uganda has to elect a woman member of parliament. And we now have nearly 150 districts. So, and then they are free to contest all the other constituencies with men. But what has that done? First of all, it has created these women seats as some kind of a ghetto. When a woman tries to stand in other seats, they say, no, you don't come here. You have your seats. And these seats now, the women who use them to be elected, of course, they become empowered by earning highly. Members of parliament are some of the most highly paid employees in Uganda. I get about $10,000 a month. When a teacher, a secondary school teacher, gets about $200 and so on. But these women, once they go and become empowered and they drive big vehicles and they have money, they make sure that that affirmative action seat is theirs forever. So it's no longer affirmative action, it's just, we have the Speaker of Parliament of Uganda. She has been, before she was a speaker, she was deputy speaker for 10 years. She is now speaker in the second term. She was a speaker for 5 years, this is the second term. Before she became deputy speaker, she was a minister in the government. She's a distinguished lawyer in her own right. She's still on affirmative action seat. She cannot contest on the ordinary seat. So unless the population down there, has the competence to challenge this, people will continue to take advantage of them. And your question was, how would I ensure? You can't tell, by the looks of people what they will do. I, wholly believed that Mr. Museveni meant what he said, until I saw him mutate into some different creature. So the guarantor must be in the competencies of our people.
And touching on some of his policies, Mr. Museveni's policies, in 2014 he signed a bill which basically meant that repeat homosexuals could be jailed for life. You were highly critical of this, and you were one of the only voices not from the LGBTQ community to be critical of that. Do you think that harmed your chances within your own country in the 2016 election?
No, I don't think so. Though, of course, again, the propaganda, is raved to try and, depict you as wanting to get children to be, used for homosexual acts and so on and so forth, which is ridiculous because whether it's for homosexual or heterosexual acts, children are protected, must be protected. And if anybody, engages with them, it's already a capital offense, that is punishable. But again, you are dealing with sentiments, you are dealing with people that don't have all the information. And so propaganda, yes, is used, but to my knowledge, I don't think that because, frankly, we have been defeating Mr. Museveni. In the last election, we still have all the evidence to show that we defeated him, and that's why we set up what is called the People's Government. But, I was jailed even before the results were announced. And in our constitution, it's only a candidate that can petition against the results. Even if you are a party candidate, the party cannot petition. It has to be you personally to petition. And you can only petition within 10 days of the announcement of the results. And all evidence must be by affidavit. And the standard of proof is that you must show that not only were you cheated, but that the cheating was of a substantial manner. You must demonstrate all this in court. But the point is, even before the results came out, the loser imprisoned the winner. And
for 10 days.
Yes. Yeah. So the thing is that in spite of all their propaganda, the intimidation, the violation of rights and so on, they still lose. They actually lose elections. In the last election, we demanded that we should have an audit. We should have, since the constitutional means was obliterated by their wrongful acts of arresting me, and we went to court and proved that I was illegally detained, we said, let's have an audit. Let's bring our results, you bring yours, let's have international supervision, let's audit the results. They refused. When they charged me with treason, it was because I announced myself a winner. I went to court and told the court that it is true. I announced myself a winner. So let's hear the case, and I show you that I was indeed truly the winner. The case has not been heard up to now, from 2016.
So you told us about, just to finish, you told us about a saying, in the home of the brave, they are crying. I think it's fair to say that you have been quite brave over the last 20 years, that you have been contesting Mr. Museveni and standing up for some sort of democracy in Uganda. What keeps you going through all the persecution that you've received from that regime, and what has motivated you to carry on even in sort of times of being imprisoned?
Well, I think part of it is what I talked about, the fact that at the beginning, I considered that I could have died. When I was in jail, first for having supported Mr. Museveni, who had gone to the bush, and I really nearly died. I was 24 years then. I was not married. I did not have children. Neither did I when I went to the war. But I felt very strongly that people should not live in situations like those, and that certainly those who come after me should have a better chance. But having so joined, there is a huge burden of colleagues that have paid huge sacrifices. Some are maimed, they are in wheelchairs. You meet them and they keep on saying, please, why did we get into all this situation? Keep on, Otherwise, we suffered in vain. We would have suffered in vain. And you feel the burden that, it's not just my own sacrifices, but the sacrifices of so many which are even more serious than mine that would go down the drain if we gave up. But, this question, of course, comes up many times. Let me tell you, I believe in God. And I think that there are many things that we sometimes do which we cannot really explain how or where we get the energy or stamina to continue doing. And I've passed through some very, very bleak moments that certainly I cannot explain how I was able to really go through. So I think there is also some kind of forces that I am not able to explain, but I believe there is also God's intervention in all this.
Thank you very much for answering my questions. I think we have time for some questions from the audience. So if anyone has one, just raise your hand. Can we go to the lady in the fourth row?
Thank you very much for that. I'm just wondering, in your perspective, what do you think that a challenge to the given system would look like, given the fact that clearly the current regime isn't going to budge and give in to the people's desires, but then any sort of revolt or coup would create long-term instability? So what would the ideal situation be right now?
Well, a coup not only would it create instability, it would recreate the same system. It would still be the guns that are in charge. So the struggle we are talking about is a struggle of unarmed people who organize to weaken those who are armed. And there are many ways in which it's done. It's a protracted kind of struggle. Let me tell you, for some years now, there were soldiers deployed around my house, full time, to stop me from going out, or if I go out, to go with their permission and follow me to see what I'm doing until I come back. But because in doing all the kinds of things they do to protect the regime, for the regime's survival, they actually don't have resources for people's survival. And these soldiers are part of those people. Their relatives have no medical care, they have no education, they have no jobs, they have no, the suffering permeates into the forces themselves. And so these fellows they bring to guard me, would be there, and from time to time I would come and talk to them, because they have brought them to me there. And I, ask them how they live. And they tell me, we live terribly. And I say, so do you realize that actually what we are doing is to fight for you? You say, yes, we actually know, but orders are coming from above. You say, don't worry, you just tell your friends that this is your struggle. And after, and they stay there quite often without any food. Sometimes I would, go and buy some ripe bananas and distribute to them, and they are very happy. And after a few days, they are taken back to their barracks. They take the words also and tell them, this thing. And quite clearly, that I'm just talking about one incident, but many similar situations have led to the security forces themselves being some of our strongest supporters. In the last election, where soldiers voted, we won convincingly. And it has caused a lot of problems for the regime. Now they are trying to recruit a new force and to do all kinds of things. So it's a protracted struggle of weakening them while strengthening the population. And at some stage, the balance tilts. And when it tilts, the soldiers join the population. Quite often, they, just like you saw what happened in Sudan, they arrested Bashir, their master, and now charged him for killing the the protesters. And of course, there is still a lot of negotiation going on because the soldiers also wanted to now be the champions. But the people said, no, wait a moment. We didn't fight for you. We want to be in charge of this thing. So it's a process that leads to people eventually taking power and subordinating the guns. That's why I say once it happens, it's irreversible because they know how to do it. Whereas if there was a negotiated change of government, for example, a negotiation amongst elites, which can happen also. The elite groups can have a dialogue and negotiate, and one gets out and is given some comfort somewhere, and another group takes over. That group still will remain outside the control of the people and can reverse even the struggle that they had achieved. So ultimately, it is the question of building the competencies within the population. This is how all these democratic societies that you have here developed, negotiating with the sovereign and so on, and building institutions, the Magna Carta, and so on, until people assert their will. You
can take the question in the front row.
I'd just like to follow up on what you just said about the point of strengthening the community and building democratization within the country. I was wondering how you felt about the role of the international community, how that could impact the process of democratization in your country. And also, I was for instance thinking about how it was about 5 years ago or something where Uganda, someone from Uganda was president of the UN General Assembly, I think. Do you think approving of the legitimacy of the current government is helpful, or how should the international community respond to your situation, and how could it be helpful, or should it be actively helpful at all?
Yes, the international community can definitely be helpful, but quite often it isn't. In fact, quite often it's part of the problem rather than part of the solution, unfortunately. Because again, the international community is a community of nations that have interests. And quite often the interests of those nations, especially the powerful ones, are at variance. Quite often they are at variance with the interests of the weak communities in our nations. Because those countries, at any rate, are still interested in having an advantaged relationship with these countries. And so, yes, to some extent, they can indeed be a problem. But certainly the international community has a huge potential to be supportive of democratization processes. And that is because, you see, even as we struggle internally, it's a very difficult struggle because of all the levers being in the hands of the few. So the people are totally deprived of resources. We talk about even these opposition parties, but even because of that situation of terror in the country, nobody can write a check to an opposition group. It would be treason and there is a lot of, there are spies everywhere and everybody is fearful. If you write a check, your business will be destroyed. If you have a job, you'll be sacked. So just resources to do the minimum things I'm talking about, to maybe have means of communication. As I have told you, means of communication are not easy. For example, some of the ways we use now to communicate, and happily, there is a lot of advantages from new media. We can get memory cards, put our messages there, and circulate them in the villages because they can fit in these smallest phones, not the smartphones. They get there, so when they chase me from the radio, I can send a memory card and it becomes a radio in a village, or whatever. If you have a little more resources and you had maybe some smartphones around, you could actually do a lot. You can do online TV, you can do online, live broadcasts on Facebook and so on and so forth. But the minimum resources to achieve some of these competencies are not available, or just to get some people to move from point A to point B. So external people can be quite helpful in just providing small interventions that can make a hell lot of a difference. But even more importantly, just insisting on rights, because rights are universal. The UN has already a mandate to ensure that I have a freedom to move freely in my country, that I should not be, deprived of my work, that I should not be, just freedom. If the international community was able to put their foot down and say, respect the freedom, that would be enough. All the other things we would do, if we can cause a meeting to happen. In fact, just today, I saw, again, leaders of the party in which I come from, the party president, was obstructed from visiting a remote area in an island. And there were so many forces just to stop. So just freedom, just insisting on freedom. All this the international community could do, but regrettably they don't. And that is because of all other interests, because in the United Nations, they want Uganda as a country to vote for them on this, on that, and they trade. That's how, in spite of all this, the foreign minister I talked about, whose briber has been convicted, was the president of the United Nations General Assembly only 2 years ago. And he became president of the United States, of the United Nations General Assembly, after he had been censured by the Ugandan parliament for corruption. Yes, he was nonetheless elected president of the United Nations. And sure enough, that's how he brought this briber. He brought him from the United Nations. I don't think that the international community can be relied on to really offer the kind of support that struggles like ours really do. Unless, of course, the dictatorship itself is very inept. Now, in our case, you must credit a person like General Museveni. He's very manipulative. He's alert, he's skilled in manipulation. He's not an Idi Amin who will just bango and make it easier for anybody to intervene.
Can we go to the hand in the front row?
Thank you very much. My name is Joel. I'm studying here. My question relates to the debt that Uganda has been engaging in. The local media has been covering it really well, the sovereign debt we have with the Chinese government. And while the government has raised the argument that it's important for us to invest in infrastructure and do all of these things, do you think that that debt is manageable for us as a country? And what would you do different with, this ever accumulating debt that we're getting in as a nation? Thank you.
Well, regarding the Chinese dates. I actually wrote an opinion in our media about it, characterizing it as odious. And I think there is a well-known principle of odious debt, you know, where you give debt, even if it was to a legitimate entity, but well knowing that the purpose for which this debt is being given is not likely to lead to the repayment. That debt becomes odious. Now, in our situation, first of all, there is contested legitimacy of the regime, and we'll make it very clear to them that it's contested. But secondly, you know, earlier on when I was chatting with colleagues outside this meeting, I told them about a road that has been built to connect the international airport at Entebbe and Kampala, which is, you know, about 50 kilometers, that has cost $480 million. It's the highest cost per kilometer of such an infrastructure in the world. And you know, what it simply means is that these are slush funds that are taken for all kinds of things that citizens then are encumbered with to pay. So it's not just the debt stock. The debt stock may, in terms of figures, appear to be sustainable, because again, people tend to use statistics. You know, it's this percentage of GDP, and therefore it's better than the other one, which is 60, 70% of GDP. But if the 60% of GDP was prudently invested, whatever debt it is, and that it was invested in projects that are viable to recover the money, that will not be a problem. But if whatever debt you take, if you have slush funds being taken away to, you know, some havens in the world, if the money that the project itself is politically motivated, not economically justifiable, you know, that you know, it leads. We've had people tarmacking roads just leading to their homes, you know, and to be paid by everybody. So that, I think, is the greatest challenge with our debt. That our debt is being contracted by, you know, some kind of mafia system, and a large part of it is not benefiting the people who will pay it, and on projects that can recoup it. That's what really makes our debt problematic. And we have, as I have said, been loudly sounding you know, caution to those who are providing this money, especially the Chinese government, that more prudence must be exercised in giving out money of this kind.
I think that's all we have time for, but thank you so much. Can everyone join me in thanking Dr. Kizzabaziya?